A new neighbor. The gentle hum of the coffee maker was the only sound breaking the early morning silence in Jake Thompson's modest suburban home. As he shuffled towards the kitchen, still bleary-eyed and half asleep, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but there was a charge in the air, an anticipation that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of his house. Mug in hand, Jake made his way to the front door, ready for his daily ritual of retrieving the morning paper. As he stepped onto his porch, the warm golden light of dawn spilling across the neatly manicured lawns of Maple Street, he froze. There, making its way down the sidewalk with an otherworldly grace, was a figure unlike anything Jake had ever seen before. At first glance, it appeared to be humanoid, but as Jake's sleep-addled brain struggled to process what his eyes were seeing, he realized that this was no ordinary mail carrier. The being's skin shimmered with an iridescent blue hue, pulsating gently with each step. Its hair, if you could call it that, seemed to be composed of fine, silvery tendrils that moved of their own accord, catching the light and refracting it in mesmerizing patterns. Jake blinked hard, certain he must still be dreaming. But when he opened his eyes again, the otherworldly mail carrier was still there, now standing at the edge of his property, regarding him with eyes that seemed to swirl with galaxies. "Good morning," the being spoke, its voice a melodious blend of tones that seemed to resonate in Jake's very bones. "I am Zara, your new interstellar postal liaison. I hope I haven't startled you." Jake opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He simply stood there, coffee mug clutched tightly in his hand, as his mind raced to catch up with what was happening. An alien, an actual honest-to-God alien, was standing on his lawn, claiming to be his new mail carrier. Zara tilted her head. At least, Jake assumed it was a her based on the vaguely feminine features, in a gesture that was oddly human. "I understand that this must be quite a shock. Perhaps we could start with a simple exchange of mail." She reached into the bag slung across her shoulder, producing a handful of envelopes. Automatically, Jake stepped forward to accept them, his fingers brushing against Zara's as he did so. A jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them, and Jake nearly dropped his coffee mug. Zara's skin, he realized, wasn't just shimmering, it was emitting a subtle vibration, like a quiet hum of energy. Thank you," Jake finally managed to stammer out. You're an alien." Zara's lips curved into a smile that was both familiar and utterly foreign. "Indeed I am. My species has recently entered into a cultural exchange program with your government. We believe that starting with something as mundane yet essential as postal services will help ease our two civilizations into a more comprehensive relationship." Jake nodded dumbly, still struggling to wrap his head around the situation. "Right. Of course, alien mail carriers. Why not?" He let out a nervous laugh that sounded strained even to his own ears. Zara's expression softened, her swirling eyes seeming to radiate empathy. "I apologize if my presence is causing you distress. Perhaps we could take a moment to sit and discuss any questions you might have. I find that knowledge often helps alleviate fear of the unknown." Before Jake could respond, a car horn blared from the street. Mrs. Johansson, his nosy neighbor from across the way, had pulled up in her minivan and was leaning out the window, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Jake Thompson," she called out, her voice shrill with excitement. "What in heaven's name is going on over there?" Jake felt a bead of sweat form on his brow. This was it, the moment where everything changed. Not just for him, but for his entire neighborhood, his town, perhaps even the world. He glanced at Zara, who was watching the scene unfold with curiosity, then back at Mrs. Johansson, whose expression was growing more alarmed by the second. Taking a deep breath, Jake made a decision. If this alien was here as part of some grand interstellar exchange program, then it was up to him to set the tone for how humans would react. He straightened his shoulders and put on his most welcoming smile. "Mrs. Johansson," he called back, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'd like you to meet Zara. She's our new mail carrier, from a bit further away than usual." Mrs. Johansson's jaw dropped, and for a moment, Jake feared she might faint. But then, to his surprise, a look of wonder spread across her face. "Well, she breathed. "An honest-to-goodness alien, right here on Maple Street. Wait until the book club hears about this." And just like that, the tension seemed to break. Mrs. Johansson clambered out of her car, practically tripping over herself in her eagerness to introduce herself to Zara. Other neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began to emerge from their homes, forming a curious but not hostile crowd around the alien visitor. As Jake watched Zara gracefully field questions and greet his neighbors, he felt a sense of pride swell in his chest. This was humanity at its best, curious, adaptable, and open to new experiences. Sure, there was fear and uncertainty, but there was also an undeniable excitement in the air, a collective realization that the universe had just become a much bigger and more interesting place. Over the next few hours, Jake's front yard became an impromptu welcome center for Earth's newest resident. People brought out coffee and pastries, lawn chairs were dragged into a makeshift circle, and Zara patiently answered question after question about her home world, her species, and the intricacies of interstellar mail delivery. As the morning wore on, Jake found himself relaxing, even enjoying the surreal situation. Zara's presence, once shocking, now felt almost natural. He caught himself admiring the way the sunlight played off her iridescent skin, the graceful movements of her silver hair tendrils, the depth of knowledge and humor in her swirling eyes. It wasn't until much later, as the impromptu gathering began to disperse and Zara prepared to continue her route, that Jake realized something had fundamentally shifted. His quiet, ordinary life on Maple Street would never be the same again. And strangely enough, he was okay with that. As Zara bid farewell to the last of the lingering neighbors, she turned to Jake with a smile that sent an unexpected flutter through his chest. "Thank you, Jake Thompson," she said, her melodious voice filled with warmth. "Your kindness and openness have made my first day on this planet far more pleasant than I could have hoped. I look forward to our future interactions." Jake found himself returning her smile, a sense of anticipation building within him. "Me too, Zara," he replied. "Something tells me life around here is about to get a lot more interesting." As he watched Zara continue down the street, her blue form shimmering in the late morning sun, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. The universe had come knocking on his door, quite literally, and he was ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. Little did Jake know, as he finally turned to head back into his house, coffee long cold in his forgotten mug, that this was just the beginning. The arrival of Zara, his alien mail carrier, was about to set in motion a series of events that would not only change his life, but potentially the course of human history. The stage was set for a tale of cultural clashes, unexpected connections, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. As the door closed behind him, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping not just into his house, but into a brand new chapter of his life, one filled with interstellar intrigue, alien customs, and perhaps even a touch of otherworldly romance. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and Jake Thompson, once just another face in the suburban crowd, was now at the forefront of humanity's greatest adventure. The next few weeks would bring challenges and revelations beyond anything Jake or his neighbors could have imagined. But for now, in this moment of newfound wonder and possibility, one thing was certain: life on Maple Street would never be the same again. Cultural clashes and unexpected connections. The weeks following Zara's arrival on Maple Street were a whirlwind of activity and adjustment. What had once been a quiet, unremarkable suburban neighborhood was now the epicenter of humanity's first prolonged contact with an alien species. News vans lined the streets, curious onlookers drove by at all hours hoping for a glimpse of the ethereal mail carrier, and government officials held daily briefings in the local community center. For Jake Thompson, the chaos was both exhilarating and exhausting. As the first human to interact with Zara, he found himself thrust into the role of unofficial liaison between his alien neighbor and the rest of the world. It was a position he never asked for, but one he approached with a mix of trepidation and determination. One particularly balmy afternoon, Jake sat on his front porch, watching as Zara made her way down the street. Despite the heat, she moved with her usual grace, her iridescent skin seeming to shimmer even more vibrantly in the sunlight. As she approached his house, Jake couldn't help but notice the way her silver hair tendrils swayed in a non-existent breeze, creating mesmerizing patterns that caught the light. "Good afternoon, Jake Thompson," Zara called out, her melodious voice carrying easily across the lawn. "I hope this day finds you well." Jake smiled, still not entirely used to the formal way Zara addressed him. "Just Jake is fine, Zara. And yeah, I'm doing okay. How about you? Settling in all right?" Zara's expression shifted in a way that Jake was beginning to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. "I'm adapting, thank you. Though I must admit, some aspects of human culture continue to perplex me." Intrigued, Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Oh, like what?" Zara hesitated for a moment, her swirling eyes seeming to search for the right words. "Well, for instance, I noticed that many of your neighbors have been leaving offerings on their doorsteps. Small statues of gnomes, I believe they're called. Is this some sort of religious ritual I should be aware of?" Jake couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of the situation hitting him all at once. Here was an advanced alien being, capable of traversing the stars, puzzling over garden gnomes. No, he chuckled. "Those aren't religious icons. They're just decorations. Some people think they're cute or bring good luck." Zara tilted her head, a gesture Jake had come to associate with her processing new information. "I see. And the plastic flamingos. Are they also for luck?" "Something like that," Jake grinned, deciding it was easier than explaining the intricacies of kitschy lawn ornaments. "Hey, why don't you come sit for a bit? I've got some lemonade if you'd like to try it." Zara's hair tendrils rippled in what Jake assumed was excitement. "I would be most interested in sampling this lemonade. Thank you for the offer." As Zara settled into the chair beside him, Jake couldn't help but marvel at how quickly he'd become accustomed to her otherworldly presence. Just weeks ago, the idea of sharing a drink with an alien on his front porch would have seemed like something out of a sci-fi novel. Now, it felt almost normal. Jake poured 2 glasses of lemonade, handing one to Zara. She examined the yellow liquid curiously before taking a tentative sip. Her eyes widened, swirling faster than Jake had ever seen. "This is remarkable," she exclaimed. "The balance of sweet and sour, the refreshing coolness. We have nothing like this on my world." Jake grinned, oddly proud that something as simple as lemonade could impress an interstellar being. "Glad you like it. So, tell me more about your world. What's it like there?" Zara's expression grew wistful, her gaze seeming to look beyond the suburban street before them. "My home planet, Lyra, is a place of great beauty and advancement. Our cities float among the clouds, powered by the energy of our twin suns. The atmosphere is rich in bioluminescent particles, so our nights are never truly dark." As Zara spoke, painting a picture of a world beyond Jake's wildest imagination, he found himself captivated, not just by the alien vistas she described, but by the passion in her voice, the way her entire being seemed to light up as she shared her culture with him. The conversation flowed easily, moving from the marvels of Lyra to the quirks of Earth culture. Jake found himself explaining everything from reality TV to the concept of weekends, each topic seeming to fascinate Zara more than the last. As the afternoon wore on, Jake realized with a start that he was enjoying himself more than he had in years. There was something refreshing about seeing the world through Zara's eyes, rediscovering the wonder in things he'd long taken for granted. However, their pleasant exchange was interrupted by the sudden arrival of a sleek black car that pulled up in front of Jake's house. 2 men in dark suits emerged, their expressions serious as they approached the porch. "Mr. Thompson," the taller of the 2 addressed Jake. "I'm Agent Reeves, and this is Agent Chen. We're with a special division of the government tasked with managing extraterrestrial affairs. We need to speak with you and Zara, is it? Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. He'd known this day would come eventually, but he'd hoped for more time to simply get to know Zara as a person, or alien, before the complications of interspecies politics came into play. Zara, however, seemed unperturbed. She rose gracefully, extending a hand to the agents in the human gesture of greeting she'd recently learned. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Agents Reeves and Chen. I assume you have questions about my presence here and the cultural exchange program." The agents exchanged a look that Jake couldn't quite decipher. "Yes," Agent Chen replied, shaking Zora's hand after only a moment's hesitation. "We have quite a few questions, actually. Would you both be willing to come with us? There are some matters we need to discuss in a more secure location." Jake looked at Zara, trying to gauge her reaction. Her expression was serene, but he noticed her hair tendrils moving more rapidly than usual, betraying what he suspected was nervousness or concern. Of course, Zara agreed smoothly. "Jake Thompson, would you be comfortable accompanying us? As the first human I interacted with, your perspective could be valuable." Jake nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. "Yeah, sure. Let me just grab my keys." As he ducked inside to retrieve his belongings, Jake's mind raced. What did the government want? Were they going to try to separate him from Zara? The thought bothered him more than he cared to admit. When he returned to the porch, he found Zara engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation with the agents. Their voices were low, but Jake caught snippets about protocol and national security. "Is everything okay?" he asked, unable to keep the worry from his voice. Zara turned to him, her swirling eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "It seems, Jake, that there are some discrepancies between what my people understood about this exchange program and what your government claims was agreed upon." Agent Reeves cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, I'm afraid this situation is more complicated than you realize. We need to get to the bottom of things for everyone's safety." As they were ushered into the waiting car, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The easy camaraderie of the afternoon felt like a distant memory, replaced by a tension that seemed to crackle in the air between them. As the car pulled away from Maple Street, Jake glanced at Zara. Her usually luminous skin seemed dimmer somehow, her posture rigid. Without thinking, he reached out and placed a reassuring hand on her arm. The jolt of energy he felt at the contact startled him, but he didn't pull away. Zara's eyes met his, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Human and alien, thrown into an unprecedented situation, united by a bond that defied explanation. As the suburban landscape gave way to the gleaming buildings of the city, Jake couldn't help but wonder. Was this the beginning of a new era of interstellar cooperation, or the prelude to a conflict beyond anything humanity had ever faced? Only time would tell, and Jake Thompson, ordinary mailman turned unlikely diplomat, found himself at the very heart of it all. The alien crisis unfolds. The sleek black government car wound its way through the city, eventually pulling up to a nondescript building on the outskirts of town. As Jake, Zara, and the two agents exited the vehicle, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The building, with its featureless concrete exterior and tinted windows, seemed designed to repel curiosity. "This way, please," Agent Reeves directed, leading them through a series of security checkpoints. Each scan and pat-down seemed to ratchet up the tension, and Jake noticed Zara's skin pulsing more rapidly, her hair tendrils coiling tightly against her head. Finally, they were ushered into a stark conference room. The fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows, making Zara's alien features stand out even more starkly against the sterile environment. A group of serious-looking individuals in suits and military uniforms sat around a long table, their expressions grave. A distinguished older woman at the head of the table stood as they entered. "Welcome, I'm Director Hawthorne. Please have a seat." As they settled into their chairs, Jake couldn't help but feel like he was in way over his head. He was just a mailman, for crying out loud. What was he doing in a top-secret government facility? Director Hawthorne wasted no time getting to the point. Zara, we've been monitoring your interactions since your arrival on Earth. While on the surface, your presence here seems benign, we've detected some inconsistencies in your story. Zara's swirling eyes narrowed slightly, the only outward sign of her discomfort. I assure you, Director, I have been entirely truthful about the nature of my mission here. Have you? A man in a crisp military uniform leaned forward, his voice sharp. Because our deep space monitoring stations have picked up unusual activity in the outer reaches of our solar system. Activity that suggests a much larger alien presence than just one mail carrier. Jake felt his heart rate quicken. He glanced at Zara, searching her alien features for any sign of deception. But all he saw was confusion and what looked like genuine concern. I don't understand, Zara said, her melodious voice tinged with uncertainty. I was sent here alone, as an ambassador of goodwill. If there are others of my kind in your system, I was not informed. Director Hawthorne's expression softened slightly. Zara, we want to believe you, but you must understand our position. The safety of our planet is our primary concern. We need to know exactly what's going on, and we need to know now. Jake, feeling a sudden surge of protectiveness, spoke up. Look, I've spent a lot of time with Zara over the past few weeks. She's been nothing but open and friendly. If she says she doesn't know about any other aliens, I believe her. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Jake. He felt his face flush but held his ground. Agent Chen cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, while we appreciate your input, this situation is far more complex than you realize. We have reason to believe that Earth might be facing an imminent threat. Threat, Jake and Zara echoed simultaneously. Director Hawthorne nodded grimly. Our astronomers have detected what appears to be a massive object on a direct course for Earth. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Zara, does your species possess technology capable of moving entire planets? Zara's luminous skin paled, her hair tendrils writhing in agitation. Moving planets. That's beyond even our most advanced capabilities. Are you certain of this? The military officer tapped a button, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the table. It showed a series of images. A massive, oddly shaped object moving through space, dwarfing nearby celestial bodies. This object, the officer explained, is approximately the size of our moon. It's moving at speeds that defy our understanding of physics, and it's on a direct intercept course with Earth. ET day is approximately 72 hours. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. This couldn't be happening. Just weeks ago, his biggest concern had been making sure the Thompson family got their subscription magazines on time. Now he was sitting in a government war room, discussing what sounded like an alien invasion. Zara stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is impossible, she said, her voice trembling. My people are peaceful. We have no designs on conquest or planetary relocation. There must be some mistake. Director Hawthorne's voice was gentle but firm. Zara, I'm afraid we need more than your word at this point. We need information. Anything you can tell us about your species' capabilities, your technology, your intentions. Jake watched as Zara's composure crumbled. Her skin, usually a shimmering blue, began to pulse with rapid flashes of color, deep purples, angry reds, sickly greens. Her hair tendrils whipped about wildly, and the air in the room seemed to crackle with energy. I don't... Zara stammered, her eyes swirling faster than Jake had ever seen, and then, to everyone's shock, she collapsed. Jake was out of his seat in an instant, kneeling beside Zara's prone form. What's happening to her? He demanded, looking up at the stunned faces around him. Do something. Medical personnel rushed in, pushing Jake aside as they began to examine Zara. Her skin continued to flash with erratic colors, and strange, melodic sounds emanated from her unconscious form. As the chaos unfolded around him, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Director Hawthorne, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, "I know this is overwhelming, but we need your help. You've spent more time with Zara than anyone else. Did she ever mention anything at all, that might shed light on this situation?" Jake's mind raced, replaying every conversation he had with Zara over the past weeks. The lemonade on the porch, the discussions about lawn gnomes and reality TV, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her home world. And then it hit him. A memory, seemingly insignificant at the time, but now potentially crucial. "She mentioned something once," Jake said slowly, his eyes never leaving Zara's flickering form, "about her planet having twin suns, and how their nights were never truly dark because of some kind of bioluminescent particles in the atmosphere." Director Hawthorne's grip on his shoulder tightened. "Twin suns," she repeated, "and perpetual light. Mr. Thompson, you may have just given us our first real clue." As the medical team worked to stabilize Zara, and government officials huddled in urgent discussion, Jake felt a weight settle in his chest. Whatever was heading towards Earth, whatever crisis was unfolding, he was now irrevocably part of it. And somehow, he knew, the fate of two worlds might rest on the unlikely friendship between a human mailman and an alien mail carrier. The next 72 hours would determine the future of humanity, and Jake Thompson, ordinary guy from Maple Street, found himself at the very center of it all. As he watched Zara being wheeled out on a stretcher, her skin still pulsing with chaotic colors, Jake made a silent promise. He would get to the bottom of this, he would help Zara, and somehow, someway, he would find a way to save his world, and maybe hers too. Little did Jake know that the true nature of the approaching object, and the real reason for Zara's presence on Earth, were far more complex and astounding than anyone in that room could have imagined. The stage was set for a revelation that would challenge everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the universe. Humanity's ingenious solution. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Jake found himself thrust into the heart of a global crisis management team, his unique connection to Zara making him an invaluable asset, despite his lack of scientific or military background. Zara had stabilized but remained unconscious, her skin pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm of muted colors. A team of xenobiologists worked around the clock, trying to decipher her physiology and the strange energy readings emanating from her body. Jake barely left the facility, catching naps on uncomfortable couches and subsisting on vending machine snacks and terrible coffee. He sat in on briefings, offering what insights he could about Zara and her culture, all while the countdown clock on the wall ticked relentlessly towards what could be Earth's final hours. It was during one such briefing, as Jake's exhausted mind drifted, that a sudden realization jolted him fully awake. "Wait," he interrupted, causing all eyes in the room to turn to him. "Zara once told me that her people communicate not just through speech, but through a kind of energy exchange. What if her collapse wasn't a medical emergency, but an attempt to communicate?" Dr. Amelia Rhodes, the lead xenobiologist, leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with interest. That could explain the unusual energy patterns we've been detecting. But communicate with what? Or who? Jake added, his mind racing. She said her people's technology was based on harnessing the energy of their twin suns. What if that massive object heading towards us isn't a weapon or a ship, but some kind of giant energy transmitter? The room erupted into a flurry of discussion. Scientists argued theories, military personnel debated strategies, and through it all, Jake felt a growing sense of hope. They might just have a chance. Director Hawthorne silenced the room with a raised hand. "Mr. Thompson, Dr. Rhodes, I want you two to work together. If there's a way to communicate with whatever's coming our way, we need to find it. Fast." The next day was a whirlwind of activity. Jake found himself in a lab that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, surrounded by equipment he couldn't even begin to understand. Dr. Rhodes and her team worked tirelessly, trying to create a device that could amplify and transmit the same type of energy Zara's body was emitting. As the hours ticked by, Jake felt increasingly useless. He was no scientist, no engineer. He was just a guy who delivered mail and happened to befriend an alien. What could he possibly contribute? It was in a moment of frustrated helplessness that inspiration struck. Jake had been absently fiddling with his phone, scrolling through old photos of Maple Street. There was one of Zara, taken on a sunny afternoon, her skin shimmering with an almost blinding intensity. "Dr. Rhodes," Jake called out, an idea forming. "What if we're overthinking this? Zara's people communicate through energy, right? But they also use light. Her skin, her hair, they're constantly emitting light in different patterns." Dr. Rhodes furrowed her brow, considering. "You're suggesting we use light as a medium for communication. But how would we generate a signal strong enough to reach that object?" Jake grinned, feeling a surge of excitement. "We don't need to reach the object. We just need to reach Zara. If we can wake her up, maybe she can send the message for us." The next few hours were a frenzy of activity. Jake worked alongside the scientists, describing the various light patterns he'd observed in Zara's skin and hair. They jury-rigged a system of high-powered LEDs, programming them to mimic the pulsing rhythms Jake remembered. As the countdown clock showed less than 10 hours remaining, they were ready for their first attempt. Jake stood beside Zara's bed. The room darkened except for the array of LEDs surrounding them. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. "Okay," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "Here goes nothing." Dr. Rhodes activated the system. The room was suddenly filled with a dazzling display of light, pulsing and swirling in complex patterns. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Jake felt his hope begin to fade. And then, miraculously, Zara's skin began to respond. Faint at first, but growing stronger, her body pulsed in harmony with the light display. Her eyes flew open, swirling with a kaleidoscope of colors. "Jake," her melodious voice was weak but clear. "What's happening?" Relief flooded through Jake. "Zara, thank God. We need your help. There's something huge heading towards Earth, and we think it might be from your people. Can you communicate with it?" Zara's eyes widened in understanding. "The Lumina," she breathed. "It's here already? But it's too soon." "The what?" Jake asked, confusion mixing with his relief. "Zara, what's going on?" Zara struggled to sit up, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "There's no time to explain fully. The Lumina is not a threat, Jake. It's a gift. A solution to a problem your people don't even know you have." She turned to Dr. Rhodes. "Your son is dying," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Faster than you realize. The Lumina is a device created by my people to rejuvenate dying stars. We've been observing Earth for centuries, waiting for the right moment to make contact and offer our help." The room fell silent, the implications of Zara's words sinking in. Jake felt dizzy with the magnitude of the revelation. But why all the secrecy? Why come as a mail carrier? Zara's expression softened as she looked at Jake. "We needed to understand your people, to make sure you were ready for such advanced technology. My mission was to integrate, to learn, to assess. And thanks to you, Jake, I can report that humanity is indeed ready." Dr. Rhodes, recovering from her shock, stepped forward. "We need to inform the director immediately. And we need you, Zara, to help us communicate with this. Lumina, can you do that?" Zara nodded, her hair tendrils swaying with renewed energy. "Yes, but I'll need your help. The device you created to wake me, we can modify it to send a signal strong enough to reach the Lumina. But we must hurry." As the room burst into action once more, Jake found himself standing beside Zara, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. "I can't believe this," he murmured. "You came here to save us." Zara's hand found his, that now familiar jolt of energy passing between them. "No, Jake," she said, her swirling eyes filled with warmth. I came here to give you the tools to save yourselves. There's a difference. As they worked against the clock to establish communication with the approaching Lumina, Jake realized that this was more than just a story of Earth's salvation. It was a testament to the power of connection, of reaching across the stars to forge understanding. And it had all started with a simple exchange of mail on a quiet suburban street. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, but for the first time since this crisis began, Jake felt a surge of true hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them with new allies, new technology, and a broader understanding of their place in the cosmos. The dawn of a new era was approaching, as bright and full of promise as the twin suns of Zara's home world. Interstellar diplomacy and personal dilemmas. As the modified light array pulsed with increasing intensity, Zara stood at its center, her own bioluminescent skin responding in kind. The room was bathed in a mesmerizing dance of light and color, unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Scientists, military personnel, and government officials watched in awe as Zara communicated with the approaching Lumina. "It's working," Dr. Rhodes whispered, her eyes fixed on the readouts from their hastily assembled equipment. "We're detecting a response." Jake held his breath, his hand unconsciously finding Zara's. The alien mail carrier turned to him, her swirling eyes filled with a mix of excitement and, was that sadness? "The Lumina has received our message," Zara announced to the room. "It's adjusting its approach vector. We have approximately 6 hours before it reaches optimal position to begin the solar rejuvenation process." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, followed immediately by a burst of activity. Director Hawthorne began issuing rapid-fire orders, coordinating with world leaders and scientific institutions to prepare for the unprecedented event. In the midst of the chaos, Jake felt a gentle tug on his hand. Zara was leading him away from the crowd, towards a quiet corner of the lab. "Jake," she said softly, her melodious voice tinged with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "There's something I need to tell you." The serious tone in her voice made Jake's heart skip a beat. "What is it? Is something wrong with the Lumina?" Zara shook her head, her silver hair tendrils swaying gently. "No, the Lumina is functioning perfectly. It's about me, about my mission here." Jake frowned, a knot forming in his stomach. "What do you mean?" "My role as an advanced scout is coming to an end," Zara explained, her skin pulsing with muted colors. "Once the Lumina completes its task, I am to return to my home world, to report on my findings, on humanity's readiness for further contact." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "You're leaving, but we've just started to." Zara's hand tightened around his. "I know. Believe me, Jake, this is not easy for me either. In all the scenarios we imagined for this mission, we never anticipated this." Her free hand gestured between them, encompassing the inexplicable bond that had formed. Jake's mind raced, trying to process its new information. The threat to Earth was averted, but now he faced a different kind of loss. "How long?" he managed to ask. "How long until you have to go?" "The Lumina will require approximately 72 hours to complete its work," Zara replied. "After that, I am expected to return immediately." 3 days, just 3 more days with this extraordinary being who had turned his world upside down. Jake felt a surge of emotions, anger at the unfairness of it all, sadness at the impending loss, and underneath it all, a determination he couldn't quite explain. "Then we'll make the most of it," he said firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "There's still so much of Earth I want to show you, so much for you to experience before you go." Zara's eyes swirled with a kaleidoscope of colors, her skin pulsing with what Jake had come to recognize as deep emotion. "I would like that very much, Jake Thompson." Their moment was interrupted by Dr. Rhodes, who approached with an excited gleam in her eye. "Zara, we need your help to prepare our scientific community for the Lumina's arrival. There's so much we need to learn, to document." As Zara was pulled back into the whirlwind of preparation, Jake found himself standing alone, his mind reeling. The world was about to change in ways he could barely comprehend. Humanity was on the brink of a new era of interstellar cooperation and technological advancement. It should have been the most exciting time of his life. But all Jake could think about was the ticking clock, counting down the moments until Zara would leave. How could he go back to his ordinary life on Maple Street after everything that had happened? How could he watch the night sky, knowing she was out there among the stars, but out of reach? As the hours ticked by, Jake threw himself into the preparations, determined to make every moment count. He worked alongside Zara, helping to translate complex scientific concepts into terms the general public could understand. They drafted press releases, prepared visual aids, and even rehearsed speeches for the inevitable global announcement. In stolen moments between tasks, Jake and Zara continued their cultural exchange. He introduced her to more Earth foods, delighting in her reactions to everything from spicy tacos to sweet ice cream. She, in turn, shared more about her world, describing fantastic cities that floated among the clouds and festivals of light that lasted for days. As the Lumina drew nearer, its presence became visible in the night sky, a new star growing brighter by the hour. The world held its breath, equal parts terrified and awestruck. Conspiracy theories ran wild, religious leaders declared it a sign of the end times, and social media was ablaze with speculation. When the time came for the official announcement, Jake stood off to the side, watching as Zara addressed the world alongside Earth's leaders. She was magnificent, her ethereal beauty and calm demeanor doing much to reassure a frightened populace. As she explained the luminous purpose and the gift her people were offering, Jake felt a swell of pride. This was the being he had come to know and care for deeply. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. The Lumina, now visible even in daylight, began its delicate work of rejuvenating the sun. Scientists from around the world collaborated with Zara, learning more about stellar mechanics in those 3 days than humanity had discovered in centuries of study. And through it all, in quiet moments snatched between world-changing events, Jake and Zara grew closer. They walked in moonlit gardens, marveling at the beauty of Earth's flora. They sat on rooftops, pointing out constellations to each other. They laughed, they shared hopes and dreams, and they carefully avoided talking about the rapidly approaching goodbye. As the Lumina completed its work, bathing the Earth in a soft, golden light that seemed to make everything more vibrant, Jake realized he was facing the most difficult decision of his life. Zara had hinted, in roundabout ways, that there might be a possibility for him to go with her, to be an ambassador for humanity on her world. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to see and experience things beyond his wildest dreams. But it would mean leaving behind everything and everyone he had ever known. His family, his friends, the quiet life on Maple Street that had once seemed so mundane, but now felt precious in its simplicity. As the final hours of Zara's time on Earth ticked away, Jake wrestled with his choice. Stay and watch her leave, knowing he might never see her again. Or take a leap into the unknown, leaving his world behind for the promise of the stars. The fate of 2 worlds had been decided, but for Jake Thompson, former mailman and unlikely interstellar diplomat, the most important decision still lay ahead. And as he looked into Zara's swirling eyes, filled with hope and possibility, he knew that whatever he chose would change his life forever. A new era for Earth and beyond. The day of Zara's departure dawned clear and bright, the rejuvenated sun casting a warm glow over the world. The Lumina, its work complete, hung in the sky like a second moon, a constant reminder of the monumental changes Earth had undergone in just a few short days. Jake stood on the launch pad, surrounded by a small group of officials and scientists who had come to bid farewell to Earth's first alien visitor. The sleek, otherworldly craft that would take Zara home gleamed in the sunlight, its surface rippling with colors that reminded Jake of Zara's skin. As the final preparations were made, Jake found himself alone with Zara for one last moment. Her luminescent skin pulsed with a soft, melancholy rhythm, her hair tendrils gently swaying in the breeze. "So," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion, "I guess this is it." Zora's swirling eyes met his, filled with a depth of feeling that transcended species. "Jake Thompson," she began, her melodious voice soft, "these past weeks have been extraordinary. You've shown me the very best of humanity, your curiosity, your resilience, your capacity for growth and understanding. I will carry these memories with me always." Jake swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. "You've changed everything, Zora. Not just for the world, but for me. I don't know how to go back to my old life after this." A small smile played at the corners of Zora's mouth. "Perhaps you don't have to. Jake, the offer still stands. There's a place for you on my world, if you want it. A chance to be a bridge between our species, to continue the work we've started here." The moment of truth had arrived. Jake had spent sleepless nights weighing his options, torn between the comfortable familiarity of his life on Earth and the boundless possibilities that awaited among the stars. Taking a deep breath, Jake made his decision. "Zora, I can't go with you. Not yet, anyway." A flicker of disappointment passed across Zora's features, quickly replaced by understanding. "May I ask why?" Jake gestured to the world around them. "Everything's changing so fast. Earth is entering a new era, and I want to be part of it. I want to help my people navigate this transition, to prepare them for a future where interactions like ours are commonplace. And I need time. Time to say proper goodbyes, to put my affairs in order. If I left now, I'd always wonder if I'd made the right choice." Zora nodded, her skin pulsing with what Jake recognized as respect and admiration. "I understand, Jake. Your dedication to your world and your people is one of the things I admire most about you. And who knows? Perhaps this is not goodbye, but merely until we meet again." As if on cue, a soft chime sounded from the spacecraft, signaling that it was time for Zora to depart. They embraced one last time, the now familiar jolt of energy passing between them, more intense than ever before. "Until we meet again," Jake whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Zora stepped back, her form already beginning to shimmer with the energy of the transport beam. "Keep looking to the stars, Jake Thompson. You never know what wonders you might find there." In a flash of brilliant light, Zora was gone, whisked away to her waiting ship. Jake watched, along with millions around the world, as the alien craft rose silently into the sky, growing smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. As the crowd began to disperse, Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Director Hawthorne standing beside him, her expression a mix of sympathy and determination. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "I know this must be difficult for you. But I hope you know that your work here is far from over. We're entering a new age of interstellar relations, and we need people like you, people who have first-hand experience with alien cultures, to help guide us forward." Jake nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I'm ready to help in any way I can, Director. What did you have in mind?" Over the next few months, Jake found himself at the center of Earth's new extraterrestrial outreach program. He traveled the world, giving lectures on his experiences with Zora, helping to dispel fears and misconceptions about alien life. He worked with scientists to develop new technologies based on what they had learned from the Lumina, pushing humanity further into the space age. But every night, no matter where he was, Jake would step outside and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Zora, perhaps looking back at him. And though the distance between them was vast, he felt closer to her than ever. 1 year to the day after Zora's departure, Jake stood in his backyard on Maple Street, gazing up at the night sky. The Lumina was still visible, a constant reminder of how much had changed. As he watched, a new light appeared, streaking across the heavens. Jake's heart raced. It moved unlike any satellite or meteor he'd ever seen. As it grew closer, he could make out its shape, sleek, alien, and achingly familiar. A smile spread across Jake's face as the ship descended, touching down gently on his lawn. The hatch opened, and a figure stepped out, luminescent skin glowing in the darkness. "Hello, Jake Thompson," Zora's melodious voice called out. "I hope I'm not too late for our next cultural exchange." Jake laughed, joy bubbling up inside him. "You're right on time," he replied, stepping forward to greet her. "I've got so much to show you." As they embraced, the stars twinkling above them, Jake knew that this was just the beginning. Earth and Zara's world were now irrevocably linked, and he was at the forefront of this new interstellar age. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever wonders awaited discovery, Jake Thompson, once just an ordinary mailman, was ready to face them all. The universe, it seemed, had much more in store for the unlikely pair from Maple Street, and as they walked hand in hand towards a future filled with endless possibilities, Jake couldn't help but think that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with something as simple as delivering the mail.